Namaste. Today we'll read this prayer of the Mother, February 23rd, 1914. At one place, when Mother was asked, what is truth? So, Mother said that you cannot define truth, but it reveals itself to those who want to become conscious of it. So, she said very clearly that why we cannot define? By defining, we limit. The moment we say this is truth, we have limited it. Also, because truth is constantly unfolding. And then she says something very beautiful. She says the word that comes closest to this unfolding of truth is dharma. This mother's words. It's so beautiful because it is the unfolding of truth that is taking place in this world. But it has assumed unfortunately, it has assumed the sense of struggle, wrestle, difficulties, challenges. So there is the legend in the Vedas, and it is mentioned in several places about Aditi, the Divine Mother's aspect of radiance, undivided consciousness. Aditi literally means that infinite consciousness. So she has 8 children, 7 are there in the skies, and 8th one is in the earth. She leaves him behind. As the story goes, she leaves him behind. And this 8th son of Aditi is Martand. So Martand is the warrior aspect of sun. And on earth, this is how the progress takes place. Very beautifully, she reminds us that, Sri Aurobindo in one of the essays on mystic fire, he says that the soul of man is a life full of battle. Nowhere else you will find this kind of thing. There is a very touching passage in Savitri when Ashupati describes to Savitri, he sees that there is a great darkness chased by a stupendous light. So he knows that there is some problem, tremendous problem which will be taken care. And he tells Savitri, I approve of your choice. If this is all, then all is surely well. If there is more, then all will still be well. That is how he speaks to Savitri. Then he turns to Narad and says, please don't prophesy. Because he knows Narad will also see. Narad will see and give in great detail. So he says, please don't prophesy. Man has been deliberately denied the vision of the future. Future is covered by a veil. Because then he describes here the mortal feet that struggle upward. They get wounded. I mean, you see the compassion of Sri Aurobindo. Because Sri Aurobindo is Ashupati. He says, you don't know. You are a celestial sage. You will go and say, Ki, this is what is going to happen. And you will go back to Vaikuntha. So he says, here are not Kailash's slopes where the nymphs, the apsaras, they are moving and they are moving freely, gliding, luminous beings. Here are neither Vaikuntha with their starry steps. So he says, this is a different world. You don't, perhaps may not know that here human beings have to climb rugged hills and they get wounded in the process. So there is a reason why fate has been veiled. Please don't reveal because we cannot bear the foresight. It is a good thing because then we always progress, keep doing the effort because we believe that this is what is going to happen. It may not happen, but it helps us to grow. But supposing we come to know that this is not going to happen, then we stop advancing. So there is a reason why future has been veiled for us. It's an evolutionary process. It is only when we reach a certain height, then we begin to see, of course, because you have reached a point where you will not deter from the course of action decreed because you know the future. But there is a point when if we know the future, we will not contribute our own part, roll into it, and hence our own growth will be stifled. So ultimately, the sum and substance of it is that the only thing worth knowing in any given situation is what is the divine law? What does the divine want of me? And that is the most difficult thing because our own being wants something, ego self, desired self, mind, even physical being has its own needs, soul in most people remains buried. And then there are people, society, family, All these things are clamoring for attention, but what is the divine will in me? So she starts this prayer very beautifully. Grant, O Lord. We go to Lord and pray, grant, 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 grant my wish, grant my boon. Not realizing that wish fulfillment can be one of the greatest delayers on the path. Because then we never take the challenge of life which comes when a wish is not fulfilled. That's why Sri Aurobindo says in Savitri, heaven's wiser love rejects the mortal's prayer. So she says, grant, O Lord, that we may be more and more conscious of thy law. That is, be one with it so that we may foster its manifestation in all things. So, what is the divine law? And there is a human law, and the two are different. One thing is very, very clear. So, divine law acts in a way which we normally sometimes, when we look at it from a human point of view, we may not only not appreciate it, but even regard it as something cruel. And the classic example is Sri Aurobindo says in Savitri, and of course now it is a well-known story, that the pupa of a butterfly caterpillar. So just when the time has come for the butterfly to emerge, it begins to bring out of itself a substance. So that substance becomes like a cocoon. And as the substance wraps it more and more, it also, the same nature, which is bringing out the cocoon on one side. Now, when there is a cocoon, it will compress you. It increases in the caterpillar the tendency to eat. Caterpillar as such are feeding all the time. So, novel solution. Divine company should be named as novel solutions. Our solution is, if you are eating more, increase production. Divine solution is very different. So, it is eating, then out of that food, it brings out of itself a cocoon which begins to stifle it. Now imagine, there is a need to eat. And you can't eat because there is a stifling. So, there is somebody passing by and says, oh, bichara, poor caterpillar. Calls a surgeon. Surgeon gives a nick, cuts it. What happens? The butterfly never emerges. This is how the divine works. There is another very interesting story I had read. So, once there is in Kailash, there are a lot of gods coming because they have to be together, celebrate some great victory. And Yamraj also comes. So, as he comes, he sees there a sparrow, and he is looking at the sparrow very quizzically, usher in its eyes, and then he goes inside. Now, Garuda is also sitting there. Garuda says, why did he look at the sparrow like that? Probably he is going to take the sparrow whenever he comes out. So Garuda calculates half an hour he will come out and take the sparrow. He is filled with compassion. So he picks up the sparrow and transfers it to the other side of the world. Because Garuda can do it, no bird can. And comes and sits there quietly, that let me have some fun. So Yamaraj comes out, he's looking here, there, doesn't see the sparrow. So Garuda smiles, says, you're looking for that sparrow? Yes. So you think that you are very smart, you will kill the sparrow? I am Garuda. I have transferred it to the other side of the world. So Yamaraj says, strange are the ways of destiny. Actually, I was looking at the sparrow because its death is destined on the other side of the world. And I was wondering how this sparrow will ever reach there. I had asked one of my dutas to be waiting there because this bird has to die there, and I was wondering how this will happen. Then I said, this is God's problem. It's not given to me to transfer. But you see, you did a work of God. So our way of looking at life is very different from the way the divine looks at it. Divine law uses everything for our progress, because that's the thing right now. The divine's concern is only one, that how we should grow out of this humanity, which is anyways a very painful condition to those who can, really look at it. Very pitiable condition, very limited. We don't know what is going to happen the next moment. And the divine is pushing so that we can cross over this passage and enter into the new superhumanity, the divine humanity of tomorrow. So everything that is happening is pushing us through this door. So what is important at that point of time is to know the divine law, what the divine intents in us, not what we want, we don't want. That is kindergarten. I want this, I want that. So divine says, okay, I will grant you this, grant you that. But as we graduate, then the divine who is, sambhar karte hain, who takes care of us, becomes also sanghar karne wale. He starts, taking away things which are no more needed for our progress. It's painful, but if we become one with the divine law, then it is joyous. Lord, grant that I may become master of my vagabond thought. So this is one of the biggest challenges of life. Our thoughts are always running from here to there, and so people say how to become master of thought. Here is a simplest of ways. Pray to the mother. How can life be so simple? Well, it can be so simple, but we need to have the leap of faith. It is not so simple because we grow up with the idea that man's mind is something amazing and it only has the power to achieve. So we really don't know how to trust. So here she is saying, Lord, grant that I may become master of my vagabond thought. Now, it's not that there are no techniques and you should not apply, but the reliance should be on the mother and the grace. That living in thee, I may see life only through thee. Right now we see life through this janam jat. By birth we are blind, cataracted eyes. So very often people say that, आँख पर चश्मा लगा के मनुष्य देखते हैं. When we love somebody, we see with a lens. Or when we hate somebody, we see with another lens. The thing is, we are born with a lens of ignorance. So everything that we see, even with the mind, is anyways an ignorant seeing. That's why we cannot understand the ways of God. So she says, let me see this world with your eyes. How do you see this world? We do the reverse. We see with our eyes, and we say, oh, you are so cruel. Because we don't understand a thing about anything. Whereas when we see with the divine eyes, then we will understand that how out of even cruelty and death, He builds love and immortal life. That's the glory of God. And the illusion of material reality may come to an end and be replaced by perception more in conformity with thy eternal reality. What is the illusion of material reality? Oh, somebody was born, died. We say now, oh, mar gaye. So this is the illusion of material reality, because really speaking, nothing dies. There is nothing like death. It's just that we change states of consciousness. Even illness, what we call as illness is nothing but a change of the states of consciousness. There is a state of disorder. The mother says there is a level of seeing where there is no illness. There are only states of disorder and states of order and harmony. So when there is a state of disorder, then we will start observing all these things within the body, and doctor makes it worse by labeling it. So now you are lifelong carrying a phatta with you, a card with you. So your disorder has become fixed into a fixed, as Shobinda says, disorderly order. You are not allowed to forget that you are so and so case. Whereas the mother says, when you look at from that point, there is a disorder. She is not denying that there is no disorder. But this disorder can be healed by bringing in a vibration of harmony and order. That is how mantras heal. One reason why mantras heal is because they carry within them rhythms of harmony. That is how Savitri heals. I have had such marvelous experiences. And I know of people, not I have had myself only, no, there are people whom I know with reading Savitri, because they are all mantric in nature. So what does it do? Now, what is a mantra? Mantra is the rhythm of the higher hemisphere. So when we really read a mantra, that rhythm begins to reset our rhythm. So there are two things acting now. The rhythm for disorder, and we are bringing in a rhythm of order. So it's a question of which will win. Now which will win is a long foregone conclusion. But we have to support this action, that's all, by faith. I know people. I know people, one classic example was when I had just started reading Savitri. Night 10 o'clock, we used to read Savitri, and this was 1985. So, our neighbor who were sharing the wall, in fact, they were the owners, and we were on a tenant house. So Sardarji, so he came one day and said, what do you read at night? So I was little apologetic because, I thought 10 o'clock and then Savitri you enjoy. So you are reading with your... so I thought maybe it is disturbing to him. So I said, I'm sorry, but we don't have any other time and we love to read this. No. What is this book you are reading? I said, here is the book. So he went inside the meditation room, looked this, that. He didn't understand as such English. That too, Shobindra's English kept it there. Came back. I said, but what is the reason? Why are you curious? He says, since the time you read, I don't know. I feel very nice. My wife feels very nice. My son's asthma has gone away. My wife's chronic knee pain has gone away, and we think it is because of what you are reading. I said, then it is okay. If that is the case. So it's the power of Savitri, which, has within it the mantric effect. And if we just allow this mantra, this rhythm, no, we should not turn all these things into okay, dead will become alive. And no, we have to understand there are certain still pending laws of nature which are in the pending file which have not yet changed. But definitely it acts first as a tremendous inner cushion, taking away the sting of misery. Second is that it does help us to, if not completely cure the illness, cut out the complication, shorten the course. That we have seen. Just it shortens the course and takes away the complications. And at third level, if we have, it can actually completely heal. And what could have been into a disaster, Mother speaks about it, that what may have turned into a catastrophe and a disaster is changed into something very mild. So all these things are there. So she says that this illusion of material reality, what is the illusion? Oh, this is real. There is only one thing which is real, the real with a capital R. All else is a distortion or a shadow or a reflection. There is no third thing. It is either a reflection, if the reflection is good, fine, but if the mirror is distorted, then it's a distorted reflection. Or it is sometimes a shadow, which is the most dangerous. Shadow of the reality. Like who is an Asura? Asura is the shadow of the Lord. That's how Sri Aurobindo describes. So she prays that may it be replaced by perception more in conformity with thy eternal reality. That means I should be able to see the reality that this shadow or distortion represents. Then only we can set it right. Let me live constantly in thy divine love, so that it may live in me and through me. So divine living in us and we living in the divine. And the third is the divine living. We are living by the divine and the divine acting through us. So these are the different possibilities within a person who is walking the path. And she says, let me live constantly in thy divine love, so that it may live in me and through me. Why live in me? Because on earth this doesn't flower. Divine love. I mean, it is so difficult. Grant that I may be an efficient and clear-sighted collaborator, and that everything within me may foster the plenitude of thy manifestation. This is such a wonderful way of summarizing Karma Yoga. So there are people who believe divine does everything. Tomar karmo tumi korema, loke bole koryami. You are doing your work, people say that I do it. This is one extreme. The other is, no, we have to do. But here she is beautifully synthesizing the two. We have a role to play, and that role is to collaborate in the divine work. Divine is working, but by clear-sightedness, by faith, by love, by transparency, by opening ourselves, we can collaborate. Or we may obstruct by doubts, resistances, despair. Ultimately, the divine will fulfill himself. There is no second way. But we can collaborate in the work, or we may obstruct the work. So she says, grant that I may be an efficient, not just a collaborator, but an efficient collaborator and a clear-sighted collaborator. I should see what you want to do and what you want to manifest, so that my will, my actions are, everything are in conformity with that. And that everything within me may foster the plenitude of thy manifestation. So the word plenitude is wonderful because fullness. It's like the same story. Shri Krishna picks up a, wheel from the chariot. And he says, I'll turn it into chakra. When, Bhishma is standing opposite him. He said, I can do it. But it's quite different from the original Sudarshan chakra. So there is a plenitude of the manifestation. That's very difficult. One can become an instrument of the divine, but to be in plenitude, fullness of the manifestation, so that it's absolutely flawless. It is just exactly as it should have been. Otherwise, there are obstacles. Ultimately, divine will fulfill himself, but through a lot of struggle. And then what is important for us to know, because we keep seeing everybody's difficulties, imperfections. So a reminder, gentle reminder as they say. I know all my imperfections. This is not an easy statement. Because she's saying, I know. She's not saying there are countless imperfections within me. That is a very general statement. And very often it may be said with this idea that there is an egoism. See, I am recognizing my imperfections. So here it is so beautiful. I know all my imperfections, my difficulties, my weaknesses. I feel all my ignorance. So she is showing us the way. So somebody may ask that, what are the imperfections of the Divine Mother? Now this is where the avatar story comes. Avatar takes upon himself the burden of all the imperfections of humanity and then shows us the way. If the avatar is born perfect, then there is nothing that he has to show. He will come, do some magic, miracle and go away. So we'll erect a temple in his name. But when he goes through the difficulties and challenges that human beings face and conquers them, then we say, okay, yes, you know it. You see, that's the beauty of the Divine Mother's ways, because she knew everything that earthly life one can experience. Often I tell this story, of course, Kakeda's story I have said the other day, and the other one where this 3-year-old Chomdi, her father had died very young age, and her mother, Minidi, they went to meet the mother along with this little child. And the mother didn't start the lecture of the Gita, according to Vedanta, none dies, none lives. Why are you crying? Tera kuch nahi tha, kuch. No, nothing. She knows by compassion what it means to have a child, what it means to lose your loved one. Because she has a prayer when she is moving away from Lunel, Paris, France, she describes that she feels the pain of those who are feeling pain for her. So she just simply has a little teardrop in her eyes, little glistening, moist, because she knows the human condition. But then the next word she says is a divine truth. You want to see him? Now this she did not expect. No. He is very peaceful and happy with me. Do you want to see him? Then for some time, Miniti was quiet. Then she says, no mother, if he is happy with you, I don't want to disturb. Come my child. Embraces her. This is the Divine Mother's way, because she understands the human misery. She knows what it means to lose somebody you love. And that's why, because she became human, always the avatar. This is the way I look at it, and we can intellectually also understand it. The reason why there is creation is because without it, the Divine Himself, there would have been something missing. So that's why the creation has been made. And the reason when Divine takes a human birth, the avatar, this is how I look at it, this is something, a magic and mystery which is incomparable to anything. Because when we turn to Him, He is there always existence. Whether there is an avatar or not, the Divine is self-existent. But it is very different from the Divine coming on earth, taking upon Himself the human life, understanding its issue. If you say Divine is supreme and you say, I have a problem here on earth, so what does Supreme tell you? This is nothing, my child. That's it. End of the story. nothingness, supreme nothingness. But when you tell to an avatar, he understands the pain of. That's how we see in Ramji's story itself. Touches Ahilya, which is Pashan, changes her. All the avatars have done like that. Mother and Shri Aurobindo, how they understood the pain of human beings. So she says, because she has experienced, gone through all this, I know all my imperfections, my difficulties, my weaknesses. I feel all my ignorance, and this is the called divine humility. Because 1914, she had already realized the inner divine. She had experienced all the Kundalini chakras. She was a master occultist. She was an adept in Buddhist yoga and had realized the yoga of the Gita and the Raj Yoga. All this she had done. But still in nature there are imperfections, especially the outer nature, small little things. So when she is saying weakness is imperfection, is not like some huge, small little things. Sri Aurobindo says that even your little gesture, your posture, divine wants the perfect perfection. And outer nature is the last to change. Outer nature is a bundle of habits. So she is, in that sense, the divine humility. I feel all my ignorance. But what we should do is what she is telling us. But I put my full trust in thee and bow down before thee in silent devotion. So whenever we are confronted with all the difficulties, impossibilities, challenges, limitations, ignorance, weaknesses, we should not justify them. That is, of course, dangerous. We are human beings, this is my nature. No, that's not what she is telling. Nor we should believe that just by my own effort I can master it. We should do what we can, definitely. That's sincerity, that opens the door. But ultimately we should rely fully on the divine grace, that however limited my resources may be, the divine can add and make it unlimited. So that reminds me of one of the stories which once I heard about in a talk. Navjatji was saying that if you think you are the worst person on earth, then who else but the divine can cure you? And if you are not the worst, he has corrected many like you, then I am one of those cases. There is a bhajan like that, no? That suna hai tare hai tumne lakho. I have heard that there are lakhs whom you have liberated by your touch. Everybody's story, if you see the story of Tulsidas, it's scandalizing. Jagai and Madhai. Sri Aurobindo uses this word. Saint Augustine there. And this is before the transformative power has come. Before the fullness of divine love has come. And yet these people, just by the name of the divine, they could cross over. So, surely there is hope for everybody. But what we have to do, she tells us step by step, to aspire to become conscious of the divine law, to aspire to become master of our vagabond thought. And while we may put all kinds of effort, we must rely on the grace to do it, so that we can see things the way the divine sees and not be carried away by the material realities, which is ultimately an illusion. Not illusion in the sense that it doesn't exist, but it is not what we are seeing. There is another truth behind it which is unfolding, but we don't understand it. So what we are saying is a distortion of appearances, in appearances. And we should aspire for the divine love so that we may become instruments of divine love. And we should aspire for an efficient and clear-sighted collaboration. We should aspire that may we become so clear-sighted and efficient so that everything in us collaborates with thy manifestation. And finally, yes, there are many imperfections, many defects, many problems. Human nature is like this. It's not, Sri Aurobindo says, even the strongest. At one place he says that if it was by one's own effort, even the strongest would not be able to arrive. What is known as the heroic sadhak in Tantra, Veer, even they cannot, because this transformation is beyond. So he says strength, if it is spiritual, is a great power. A greater power is sincerity. But the greatest of all powers is grace. This is a letter of Sri Aurobindo. And then he ends up this letter by saying, how many times have I not reminded you of the phrase of the Gita, Aham tva sarva papebhyo mokshishyami masucha. Abandon all dharmas and take refuge in me alone. I will free you from all sin and evil. Do not fear, do not grieve. So she says, I know all my imperfections, my difficulties, my weaknesses. I feel all my ignorance, but I put my full trust in thee and bow down before thee in silent devotion. That's why they could tell us, it doesn't matter. Whatever be your difficulties, the grace is always greater, because they ultimately embodied that grace. And there's so many instances of people with difficulties, defects. One classic example was of a gentleman who would send wires to Sri Aurobindo. Sir, I fell again. Whatever that means. Need your blessings. And Sri Aurobindo is sending blessings. Ashish. Sir, again. And again, and again, and always the blessings. Every time you turn to the Lord will. He doesn't get annoyed and say, oh, enough now. Tie up your bundle and stay in a corner. He doesn't. He never condemns. In volume 2, Mother says that the Divine Mother never condemns, never judges you. Because she knows only love. In fact, she is love. Namaste.